So I want to point out that I actually don't like a lot of the cultural aspects that happen in academia, and it really is focused on output. And it's a really perverse measure of sort of productivity that we have in academia. And I want to talk about that in sort of the challenges that are a result of it, um, and the culture that it actually creates. Right. So I'm a professor of business. That's what I do, and what we end up measuring ourselves on are publications. Right, it's the only thing that matters. The more that I think about this, the more I think like, hey, it is the only thing that actually matters is what journal articles that you've actually created, and put out there. Now, in my field, and it's not true of all of the different sort of scientific fields. In my field, uh, to do a good job, it takes about a decade to actually get a paper published. So 10 years. And to do a good job, where you're doing things right, it takes about a decade. It takes a long time. Now, if you were to measure your performance based on one day of graduation, right? So imagine that you started kindergarten, and then at high school, you measure yourself based on, all of the different things. The only time that you measured yourself is at the end when you graduated high school. You think that would be absolutely absurd, right? Like starting in kindergarten and not getting any feedback, anything like that, and then telling people that you're wonderful or not wonderful based on this 10-year cycle, right? And that's a patently absurd, right? And so that's actually what happens within the academic game. You're getting measured on these outcomes that just frankly don't happen that often. And you're being assessed at about year 5, probably even the earlier, you'll be assessed that you're underperforming, even though that the outcomes actually take about a decade to create. And so it's like telling somebody at about, yeah, probably it's about year 2 actually. So you're 2 years in and you tell people that you're underperforming and that you are doing terrible, right? Like that is literally the entire culture behind the academic game. This is true of any institution. And it's not true, particularly it's my institution probably does a better job than most. But it's, this is what happens. And then you're not sort of considered good enough until you get publications about 10 years in. And then all of a sudden, people would say, hey, you're good enough, right? So this psychological game behind it is really, really perverse. And it creates these strange incentives for people to be absolutely obsessed with that particular outcome. And it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense if you think about it, that you're truly obsessed with this particular outcome, when in fact, what you should be obsessed with is the little tiny steps that happen along the way that are just sheer joy in your life, right? So, finding some interesting story, pursuing some novel technique, like just different things, or just having a coffee with somebody that is a joy in your life, where you could talk about different ideas. These are the things that you should be obsessed with. And if you think about, using this analogy once again, so if you think about K through 12, which is about the same amount of time to get a publication, what you get measured on is like, are you actually doing your work? Are you being a nice person? Are you a genuine human being? Are you doing the little steps along the way? Those are the ways that you traditionally get, evaluated on. And that is something that you could sort of keep your eyes on the game, and you tend to be a little less obsessive, but there is still this sort of obsessive thing that goes on with the culture behind it, where you talk about, who won, who didn't win, that kind of stuff. And, this thing came up the other day with Lee, where somebody commented that, so I have tenure, for example, and somebody commented that, once you get tenure, you're unusually relaxed, and everybody else is all stressed out. And I couldn't tell you that that's actually farther from the truth of who I am as an individual. Tenure mattered to me. It did. It was a big thing. But it didn't matter in the sense that I became a different person. I've always been. I've never liked the culture with sort of being obsessed with outcomes. In fact, I teach, or we teach our kids not to be obsessed with outcomes as best as we can. Obviously, if somebody gets a good grade, we say, hey, good job, you're doing a good thing. But we try not to get people to be obsessed, or our kids to think about comparison between who's doing what and, what are their outcomes compared to you. And the reason why I stress this so much is because it's a learned thing. So early on in my sort of career, I thought that I could, when I started the whole the research game, I thought you could sort of perform better than everybody else. But what you realize after a long period of time is that your actions have little impact on the actual outcome that happens. There is so much that goes on behind the scenes that are not tied to your specific actions, right? So you, that you might, I don't know how to sort of specifically say this, but, you kind of get, I guess, let down by the entire system repeatedly, right? And it might not be, it might be specific individuals, it might not be specific individuals. It's the sort of system that creates this. But, you put in the actions time and time again, and it doesn't result in outcomes. And so I learned that early on, that you need to separate yourself from actual outcomes, and you need to be just content with who you are. So when this, I'm going to come back to this idea of academic culture now. So whenever I talk to people that are really into that culture, I need to take a step back. I can't deal with it. I am not, it's not me as a person. And it turns me into somebody that I just don't want to be. And so I actually don't tend to hang out with a lot of academics, simply because of the focus on the career and the objective and the outcomes is the only thing that matters. And that doesn't resonate with me. That doesn't make me, and I realized, so first of all, the sort of objective doesn't happen that often. It's a decade out. I do pretty well. I would say that I'm, I have some confidence and some capabilities in what I'm doing, and I work hard, and, moderately successful, I guess, if you'd sort of consider that kind of stuff, given the constraints that I have. I've done well with my life, but I don't like the idea that my life surrounds just not one particular thing. My kids, we have these conversations once in a while, and they were sort of pointing out that, if some people are particularly good at one thing, they sort of fall down on other things, right? And I strongly believe that. What you'll end up seeing is people that are pretty shallow in who they are as individuals, and the culture creates a sort of very shallow existence where you're tied to these objectives, and that's the only thing that actually matters, right? The only thing that actually matters is achieving those particular objectives, and that's how you should sort of satisfy yourself that you suggest that you're a good person based on getting those particular objectives. But I've lived my whole life, realizing that that is not the critical thing. The critical thing is being okay with who you are. And the way that you do that is you balance a lot of different things. And it's not a balance. It's a big, messy mess. So for us, my family, maybe me, my family is a very important part. Hopefully they feel the same thing about us. That's number one. And so I would quit everything that I do for my family in a heartbeat. There's that, and then there is, fitness is a really important part. Going for walks, actually talking to people, having a conversation where I feel like I'm conversing with them, without the sort of shallow objectives, I guess. And, as I've done this, I realize that all of this stuff is very important. Meaning in life, like having meaning, is very important to me. And I don't get any meaning from the career, from the ideas that the infrastructure and how we measure things and the sort of objective of way things are. There's zero meaning for me in that life, right? The moving from one thing to the next. And I've been such an unusual person, I think, this way, that I've never felt that meaning from the career, from different aspects. Even going back to when, I started university, I just like to work. I like to work, and I don't like the outcomes itself, right? And I know that this seems really weird, and it changes my life, and the things that I do are far different than what most people actually do, right? Like, if you think about people rationalizing their life, they tend to, if the objective is everything, then, what you should do is do the easiest things and everything else except for, the thing that sort of gives you your objective in the end, right? So in undergraduate education, it was, take all of the easiest courses you could do, except for take those, the hard courses that are mandatory that you actually have to take, right? I never did that. I always took the hardest possible courses and the things that I just found inherently interesting. So I almost double majored in sociology and engineering, right? The double majoring in sociology wasn't like sort of the easy courses. I like to take theory, right? Like I took sociological theory. I think I took a couple of those courses. They were interesting. Now my grades definitely suffered because of it. It was hard. And then what I did, my master's and my PhD was like, okay, let me do a economics degree at the same time. And so my master's, I completed a bunch of extra economics courses, undergrad econ courses, because I just enjoyed it. It was fun. And then my PhD, I, almost double majored in economics as well, or in finance. That was my goal, but there was somebody in that wouldn't sort of, didn't encourage me to do it at the very end. And so I think I was one course away or two courses away from actually doing that because I didn't want to recognize the comprehensive exams in finance as well, which I would have loved to have taken. Um, and so, once you reach somebody that does that, that is in a reasonable amount of authority, it kind of takes out the weight, it deflates you instead of somebody that's encouraging. So, what I'm getting at with all of this is doing things, and I'm now doing the reciprocity project, right? Like it's extra work on top of everything. Doing things for the sake of doing things and just working gives me a whole bunch of joy. I feel good doing that. I don't get any satisfaction from getting that, that objective. Getting an A, for example, in my grades did not matter to me. It was nice. I worked hard, but they really didn't fulfill me as a person. And I've long realized that there's no fulfillingness from that. I love that working, but it didn't like any of the infrastructure behind what it means or I think what normal people are. And I realize it's really unusual to say this, and to talk about it. Very unusual. It's kind of a weird thing, right? Like you either have people that are, you either have people that are not interested in the outcomes, right? So they don't do anything, or they're just obsessed with the outcomes, and that's the only thing that they talk about. And for me, I think I've just been, and I think for me, it's having good role models in my life, right? So, my parents, especially my dad. So my mom stressed not worrying about these outcomes. It was always a big thing, right? Like, my aunt used to say everybody shit too. And I know that's a bad way to say some bad words, but it's true, right? Like nobody is better than anybody else. And it's such an important part of my life now that she has said that. And that's part of my life. My mom used to say that all the time, right? We all put our pants on one leg at a time. Now, my dad, this is where I think it was such a good combination, was that my dad would, my mom would sort of stress that stuff. And my dad just works. He wasn't like obsessed with the outcomes. He didn't sort of move up in the corporate ladder. He had the same, pulp and paper mill operator job. He had that same job for 43 years, but he just worked. And then when he got home, he had to sleep. And he did shift work, and so he'd sleep his 8 hours, and then wake up, and then he would just go do some more work. And he would just putter around outside, doing things outside always, things in the garage, going and getting wood outside. We had a wood furnace, so we heated, in the wintertime in northern Ontario. You just work. And he just worked all the time. It wasn't like a work of, to achieve things in life. Like it was just work from the pleasure of doing the thing that you're actually doing. And I want to stress that. And I think that is rubbed off on me in terms of, doing work just for the sake of working, just for the joy of it. Right. And, that is rubbed off on me. I feel like I get zero, satisfaction from any of the sort of moving up the ladder and all that kind of stuff, but I get tremendous amounts of joy from just doing things, from just working, right? And I think for me, the way that I've removed myself from this culture, and I don't like hanging out with I don't like hanging out with a lot of academics because it's not who I am. I don't feel right. I feel like I'm very focused. I feel like the odd person out because I don't talk. I don't care about that stuff. I do not care about that stuff. So I think the key for me, and to keep myself, okay, it's just working, feeling Um, just puttering around, doing things, one little thing at a time. Uh, all of that helps me become a better person. And I have to push back all the time on the career objective stuff. It kind of naturally happens anyways. And so I try to push back from all of that stuff. Um, and to me, I feel like I know I sort of miss out on a lot of opportunities. Right? Like I know that is a sort of thing. And I could probably be making a heck of a lot more money. Absolutely. Being a lot more successful. Absolutely. But I feel just working at things and just doing things matters more to me than any of the sort of pomp and circumstance that you get from doing those things. So it's really just joy for me to just be able to live life and to putter around. And I'm a big fan of that, of just working for the sake of just working without the objectives. And I hope we teach our kids that. I teach my wife and I teach our kids that we simply, in order to do well, in order to live, a meaningful life, you have to forget about all that stuff. The outcomes, you have to push it back against it. Now, mind you, maybe there's people that like they're full on into it and they, are very career motivated and they're, climbing the ladder and in academia, getting all these publications, playing the games and doing all of that kind of stuff. And they feel very fulfilled from doing that. Maybe there's not a person like that. But I think, honestly, most people that I talk to, I don't think they feel fulfilled by doing that. I don't think they have any meaning in their life by doing that. I think, for the most part, people feel very empty. And now, the challenge with that, right, with doing things for the objectives, is that at some point, you reach a level of what your capabilities are, given what's actually going on, right? We also reach this, I guess it's kind of a Peter principle sort of idea, right? You sort of go to your level of competence. But, at some point you have to realize that I just can't do any more than what I'm currently doing, and I have to be okay with that, right? The world will extract as much value from you as possible, and you will not have any control from that. But if you simply are okay with who you are, you do your work, you go home, you enjoy your life, and if you do that repeatedly, you don't worry about the other stuff as much. You don't worry about all of the other things that happen. And I think, I look around and I think about the people that do sort of obsess with those outcomes and then they don't achieve it. And that's a lot of darn people. The majority of the world will go through this, right? I would say 99% of the world will actually experience this, right? We're not all a bunch of Elon Musk, but even in an Elon Musk, the wealthiest person in the world, or, this guy, the French, luxury baron. I forget the guy's name. But, most of the world is not like that. And even if you are an Elon Musk, right, or this French luxury baron, and you're at that level, the world still wants more, right? And it still wants to extract more value from you. And so the demands are relentless even at that level. So I think the key is to think about, I'm just good enough, right? Like I am fine with who I am. And knowing that you're a decent human being, you're doing everything that you're doing, I think that should be the outcome. That should be the result of what we do. Focusing on those damn outcomes doesn't amount to anything, right? Focusing on trying to get the people that strive to get an A and then they define themselves as getting an A, um, they are never complete inside because there's always another thing that you try to get at that you're an A, and you realize that you're never an A. You're going to reach a point that you have to redefine yourself and think about yourself. So I think my parents have done a very nice job for me. My parents have set me up to realize that you could be okay with whoever the hell you are, and things just naturally happen if you just let it happen, right? As long as you putter around, you just keep working and doing things. Doing things for the sake of doing things should be the objective in life, not doing things for the outcomes they actually give you. You're never going to feel, and this reminds me of, I like to watch sort of survival shows outside. One of them is like Alone, for example, or, these things where people go out in the woods and they have to spend some time out there, naked and afraid. And you look and you know right away who's actually going to do well. The people that do well almost always just putter for the sake of puttering and doing things for the sake of doing things. The ones that don't do well are the ones that are very focused on a particular outcome or, like achieving something, or they have this sort of very, that they sort of know what's going, like this artificial confidence, right? And when you look at that, you see people, to me, I get better with sort of getting a sense of people much better in my life, much better. And I used to be kind of very Greek around the years, sort of very naive in a lot of things. But now I use that as a strong indicator of, what is their moral compass? Who are they as a person? I use that, this feeling of, are they just in it for the objective alone? If that is the case, I know that it will not be a good relationship, right? It sort of tells so much about a person when they focus on just the objective and focus on the outcomes itself, rather than just doing the work and just hanging out doing the work, right? I think about this, my dad, for example, if it was the objective, right? The objective was to keep your house warm. Well, damn it would have been a heck of a lot cheaper and easier to pay for an oil furnace back in the day, right? We lived far enough away, we would have got an oil furnace to heat the house. It would have been cheap, relatively cheap, way easier than what he did, right? But instead he chose to go into the woods and just cut down trees and collect those trees, bring them in. If you've ever cut down trees and done this, especially in the dead of winter when there's lots of snow, it is an unbelievable amount of work to do that. Just a lot of drudgery, right? Like that's the way it is. But when you're out there and you're doing it, it's usually 40 below, very cold. It's blue skies. You hear the birds. You hear the creaking and the cracking of the snow. You've got a cold nose, and there's something about it. That experience that you feel complete, normal. You feel like I'm doing something at this moment. And if you think about that, right? The entire objective was easy to solve. There's really no reason at all for them to be, my dad to be doing this, other than the fact of just doing it for the work and enjoying the process of being outside and doing that. And by doing that, he and my mom set our family up to do well. And I very much appreciate that. To do well in a world that is relentless in terms of having demands of you. Uh, and I really think that of my parents. So what I can sort of rationalize and sort of think or ponder with you is try not to get involved in the culture of being focused on the objective and just the objective. Try to think about how you can just do work for the sake of doing work, removing any possible objective that you get. You just do it just because you like it, right? Like you just do things for the hell of it, right? There's no reason for many of the things that we do in our life other than just having the sheer joy of it. Now, if you just do things because of the objectives that you're trying to achieve, you're gonna run into serious issues. Mentally, health wise, a lot of that stuff. You have to do things because you just like to do the things, and it should be part of your life. And I think we should teach that more. I think that should be more of an important lesson that we all reflect on. Do things just for the sake of doing it, and not for the sake of any objective that you get from it. Any of the relationships that had a hint of sort of transactionalness in it, that it's just for the objective, have ended poorly and have not been a good relationship. All of the ones, and there's very few in my life, all of the ones that are based on just doing things for the sake of doing things, for the sake of just hanging out, loving each other, those things add a tremendous meaning and value in my life. Definitely. So I'd encourage you to think about that. How can you do things for the sake of doing things? It's going to be really weird. You'll be the only person that does this. Very few people in this world that actually do this. And you'll stick out like a sore thumb. But it turns you into a person that you can live with. And you become, me, I feel more complete the more I do that. And it's always requires work, and it requires a great deal of effort to not get attached to objectives. So I encourage you to do that. Spend the work, the hard work, to not actually become successful. All right, take care, and have a wonderful day.